I am a leading male jewelry designer in the fashion industry. My jewelry pieces sell out almost immediately after their release, and many luxury brands eagerly seek collaborations with me. Even socialites take pride in owning jewelry designed by me. However, when I announced my retirement, everyone expressed their joy and hopes for my departure. Only my girlfriend's close friend, an up-and-coming jewelry designer, voiced her support for me. He is the senior I respect the most, and he is exceptionally talented in jewelry design. Please don't misunderstand him, he is definitely not a copycat. As for the noise from the outside world, I don't care at all. I chose to leave the chaotic fashion industry and return to a peaceful rural life, living off gathering herbs and farming. In my previous life, the jewelry I designed for the wife of a billionaire bore a striking resemblance to his debut work, which resulted in her furious anger, as she thought I was brushing her off. I was blacklisted by the industry, attacked by netizens, and became a figure that everyone despised. Despite my efforts to showcase my designs and processes, my girlfriend's friends always seemed to be one step ahead of me. I felt desperate and chose to end my life at home. However, when I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day when the wealthy matron came to collect her jewelry. Wow, the jewelry was simply breathtaking. Listening to Assistant Xiao Wu's voice, I felt a severe headache. I tried hard to open my eyes, looked at him, and then looked around. Eventually, my gaze settled on the jewelry set in front of me, called Mayon. This is a custom design I created for Mrs. Wang, the wife of the richest man, and it is also my most satisfying work. I felt a shock as I realized that today was the day Mrs. Wang came to pick up the jewelry. I was about to ask Wu to notify Mrs. Wang to cancel today's meeting, but it was already too late. The door to the office opened, and Mrs. Wang walked in with a few bodyguards. As soon as she entered, she was captivated by the jewelry on the desk. "Wow, is this the jewelry you designed for me?" she exclaimed. "Tin, you truly are a master jeweler of the highest caliber. This set of jewelry perfectly matches my taste. It is both glamorous and elegant." Before I could say anything, Mrs. Wang eagerly asked Xiao Wu to help her try on the jewelry. Just then, Mrs. Wang's secretary handed her the phone, and her expression immediately turned serious. I felt a tightness in my chest. The situation was indeed identical to the last time. Just as Mrs. Wang was about to try on the jewelry she adored, a promotional video featuring Kai suddenly surged to the trending list. It was a set of jewelry that every girl should own in their lifetime. The Rise of Mayon, a talented designer. Kai is my girlfriend's first love. In my previous life, he also made headlines around this time. The jewelry featured in the trending topic was an exclusive design I created for Mrs. Wang. When Mrs. Wang saw the trending topic, she was extremely angry and accused me of using stolen items to insult her. I not only wanted to explain to Mrs. Wang, but also to prove myself to the internet community. So, I shared my design sketches and the initial draft of the jewelry. However, no matter what I presented, Kai always managed to come up with earlier evidence. The online space quickly became filled with condemnation and humiliation directed at me. In the end, they even questioned my status as a top designer in the world and denied all my works over the years. My girlfriend Qing also publicly spoke out for me, stating that she personally witnessed my design process and that this set of jewelry was my own creation. Just like that, my reputation plummeted overnight. After trying every possible way, I felt there was nowhere left to turn. Overwhelmed with despair, I chose to end my life. Perhaps heaven felt that I was suffering too much and thus gave me a second chance to live. I want to know who that person is who stole someone else's life. I want everyone to see the truth clearly. Mrs. Wang was filled with anger. "Tin, is this the custom jewelry you designed for me? This is what you call unique. How dare you use this stolen item to insult me?" I stood up and deeply bowed to Mrs. Wang. This set of jewelry was indeed designed by me, and I'm not quite sure where the problem lies. Mrs. Wang, please give me another week, and I will redesign a set of jewelry for you. Rest assured, there won't be any problems this time. Although Mrs. Wang still wore a look of discontent, I hoped to reassure her. Perhaps it was because my previous designs were indeed quite captivating. In the end, Mrs. Wang only left me with a final warning. "This is your last chance." Watching her silhouette fade away, I quietly breathed a sigh of relief. In my last life, I was caught off guard by an unexpected plagiarism scandal. He was determined to prove his innocence, but ultimately fell into a vicious cycle of self-justification, leading to a tragic outcome. This time, I will never let others control me again. Xiao Wu appeared very anxious and asked, Brother Tin, what exactly is going on? What went wrong? Is there a problem within the team? Shouldn't we investigate this? Xiao Wu is my most trusted assistant, and this set of jewelry was made under his witness. He knows very well that this set was entirely my design. Therefore, he is also confused about Kai's situation and doesn't understand what exactly happened. But there is no time to investigate it now. I only have 1 week, and this is Mrs. Wang's final opportunity for me. This time, I decided not to design at the company, but to return home. Throughout the following week, from brainstorming to completing the design, I did it all by myself. During that week, I didn't even turn on my phone, ensuring that no one else knew about it. After I finished the design, I sent the drawings to Xiao Wu and asked him to contact the factory for production. After finishing all this, I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that there shouldn't be any mistakes this time. However, half an hour later, Xiao Wu called me, sounding very anxious. Tin, you need to check your phone. Kai has released a new work that looks exactly like the jewelry I designed. I immediately hung up the phone and opened my social media app. Sure enough, I found the set of designs I had worked on in isolation for a week on Kai's account. It's simply incredible. In order to avoid falling into the trap of self-proving like in my past life, this time I decided to let my strength speak for itself. But why are things still developing this way? In my previous life, I was criticized as the parasite in Kai's stomach, when in reality, Kai is more like the parasite in my stomach. Otherwise, how could she have identical copies of my designs? I checked the comments under the official announcement video, and they were filled with praises from netizens. My goodness, is this really jewelry designed by humans? I used to think jewelry was very tacky, but now I realize I had been too simplistic in my previous thoughts. On the very first day of saving money, everyone praised my work, but the designer they were complimenting was not me. At that moment, Mrs. Wang directly issued a statement saying she wanted to purchase this set of jewelry exclusively, with the price to be determined by Kai. My phone fell heavily to the ground. It's too late. Mrs. Wang will surely love this set of jewelry, as I designed it especially to match her personality. What's worse is that within just a week, the newcomer Kai released 2 shocking pieces in a row. This year, the National Jewelry Design Competition has publicly invited Kai to participate, along with his 2 pieces. As a rising jewelry design master, he has received widespread attention. With his increasing popularity, a former designer from my team publicly accused Kai. He mentioned that he had seen Kai's Rosian work and claimed that I exploited team members and plagiarized their ideas and creations. Initially, I had also planned to imitate this piece, but due to Kai's overnight fame, I decided to abandon that idea. Although this exposé is fabricated, the designer did indeed work in my team before. For internet users, his identity has become evidence. As a result, they flooded my account with insults just like last time. It's truly frustrating. People like you are really the disgrace of the fashion industry. Not only have you plagiarized others' work, but you have also affected their lives. Xiao Wu was infuriated and felt powerless, while the netizens were self-righteous and refused to listen to any opinions. At this moment, Kai publicly supported the designer who had defamed me. I vowed to defend the dignity of originality. My team welcomes every talented and principled designer. Originality will never die, and we have zero tolerance for plagiarism. Once these comments were made, the anger of internet users towards me reached its peak. In a flash, Kai, who was clearly a thief, became a symbol of justice, and many wonderful words were used by netizens to describe him. I closed my eyes and gently rubbed my temples. The National Designer Contest is next week. Kai, let's meet. Before the designer contest started, I sneaked into the audience. The competition hadn't even started yet, and Kai was already surrounded by judges. Despite his young age, his performance was truly outstanding. It's difficult to create such works without a certain level of depth and inspiration. The last designer with such talent was Tin. As soon as this was mentioned, the expressions on the judges' faces changed. Who would have thought that the person who plagiarized would actually call himself a designer? Stolen things can never truly belong to you. Now, does he still dare to come forward and respond? I really regret ever admiring him so much. Listening to what they said, I felt a shock in my heart, but I couldn't say anything. I can understand their feelings. In our industry, the thing we despise the most is plagiarism. What upset me more than the judge's comments was that my girlfriend Ching was standing right next to Kai. They were each other's first love. I used to think he had been deceived by Kai as well, but it wasn't until she publicly supported him that I realized they were on the same side. The betrayal of my partner became the final blow I couldn't endure. I don't know what means Kai used to steal my work, but he can only take my creations. He cannot take away the unique inspiration and creative concepts in my mind. He could never understand the source of the designs for these two pieces of jewelry. This is the evidence I have to prove his guilt. The designer competition is about to begin soon. As Mr. Kai spoke confidently on stage, I stood up from the audience. Mr. Kai, since these two sets of jewelry are your designs, may I ask you a few questions? What is your creative philosophy? Where does your inspiration come from? Why do your jewelry frames have a pastoral style, while the insets feature the latest trendy gemstones? Doesn't this seem contradictory? Mrs. Wang grew up in a wealthy family in a big city. Since marrying the richest man, her life has become luxurious, making her a leader in the socialite circle. Although she yearns for the clear streams of nature and the freedom of the fields, her jewelry must reflect her identity and status. Having spent her childhood in the deep mountains with her grandmother, she drew design inspiration for these two sets of jewelry from nature. Combining the most precious gemstones of the moment, it showcases her elegance and uniqueness. Freedom and nobility, though conflicting, coexist in harmony. This is the inspiration behind my design and a reflection of my upbringing, which Kai cannot possibly understand. At this moment, Kai smiles slightly, showing no fear at all. I feel truly honored to be able to answer my idol Tin's question. The inspiration for this jewelry set came from a chance hiking experience in the mountains. I know that every girl loves beautiful gemstones, but there is always a dream of a fairy tale forest in their hearts. Which girl hasn't dreamed of being a princess in a cottage in the woods? I want to tell every girl that no matter where you are, you can be your own queen. At the same time, I am willing to protect the little princess within you. The inspiration for these two sets of jewelry comes from the theme of freedom, elegance, and childlike innocence. His words moved many girls to tears. I was stunned, as if struck by lightning. What he said was exactly what I had in mind. How could this be possible? How is this possible? I rushed out of the auditorium, unable to accept everything that was happening. What would I do if he really could know what I was thinking? This is too incredible. Ching chased after me and grabbed my hand. Tin, you're being so ruthless. What were you just doing? Do you really want to harm Kai? Can't you just accept him like this? I pulled my hand away from hers and stared intently at her face. She was filled with anxiety over another man, completely disregarding my feelings. How could she be my girlfriend? She seemed more like Kai's girlfriend. Ching, who exactly wants to ruin whom? You clearly know who designed those jewels. You also know how hard I've worked to get to where I am today. On what grounds do you criticize me? I feel really upset and can barely stand. Ching looked at me coldly, showing no concern for my situation at all. I've told you many times that Kai is my brother. We are family, so does it really matter if someone copied something? Can you stop being unreasonable? I chuckled to myself, and in my peripheral vision, I saw Kai walking towards us quickly. As I looked at Kai's face, a sudden idea struck me. I took a step back, distancing myself from Ching. I decided that I would no longer draw design sketches. Kai was stunned, and his face turned pale in an instant. Ching grabbed my shoulders and shook me vigorously. What are you talking about? How could I not draw the design? Seeing their reaction, I understood. If I stopped, Kai wouldn't have any new works either. Although I didn't know the exact reason, I decided to leave this industry so I wouldn't be making clothes for others anymore. I ignored the two people in front of me and turned to leave. My actions in the design competition completely angered internet users. After this incident gained traction, I posted a statement on social media announcing my withdrawal from the community. As soon as the statement was released, netizens cheered and quickly spread the news. The plagiarist has finally stepped down. He can no longer stay. This community no longer welcomes him. Allowing him to leave on his own is indeed a form of leniency, and he should be thoroughly removed from the industry. The voices of netizens have been heard, and the industry has revoked all the honors I received in the past. I chuckled self-deprecatingly and decided to withdraw from the scene, realizing that these empty titles hold little significance. Unlike the joy expressed by the netizens, Kai posted a video on his account with a somber expression. He mentioned that Tin is his idol in the jewelry industry, and without him, he might not have entered this field. I believe Mr. Tin is not a plagiarist and hope he can continue designing works that people love. He spoke sincerely. If I hadn't understood his struggles, I would have been moved as well. As expected, many netizens left messages in his comments section. Kai, don't be sad, that kind of person isn't worth it. Our Kai is truly kind. I haven't chosen the wrong idol. Today is a day to love Kai. I turned off my phone and stopped looking at any comments. This prosperous world is just as you wish. I will pay close attention. How could Kai create design sketches without me? The next day, I set off on my journey home. My parents passed away early, and I grew up with my grandmother. My grandmother is a mysterious fortune teller. Since I can remember, I have lived with her in a remote mountain area. She prepares medicine while I catch chickens. She reads fortunes while I entertain the birds. She grows vegetables, and I am in charge of watering them. Although life in the mountains can be a bit dull, it is also quite comfortable. The big city has many tricks up its sleeve, so I think I'll go back to my peaceful life. As I bumped along the road and walked into the familiar little cabin, Grandma stood up from the wooden table. Tin, why are you back at this time? After seeing my face, her expression shifted from surprise to concern. She asked if I had encountered anything strange recently and reassured me not to be afraid, saying that I could talk to her about it. Hearing this, I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. Seeing that I was upset, my grandmother didn't ask any more questions. Instead, she gently patted my back, just like she used to when I was a child. Since I had decided to say goodbye to my past life, I didn't plan to bring up these matters with her again, so as not to add to her worries. After returning home, I helped my grandmother collect herbs in the deep mountains every day and fertilized the small vegetable garden. In the blink of an eye, a year passed, during which I didn't draw a single design. I have been keeping an eye on Kai's updates. As expected, during this year away from the industry, he hasn't designed any jewelry. Netizens have started to question his abilities, and affluent individuals and luxury brands have also put pressure on him. Like many onlookers, I was anticipating his downfall, but it turned into a joke at my own expense. In response to the criticisms online, Kai released a video addressing the situation. In the video, Kai appears very downcast, with gaunt cheeks, unkempt hair, and stubble. He speaks with a trembling voice, stating that he has recently been the target of malicious attacks from others, who have even sent wreaths and animal carcasses to his home. He mentions being accused of blocking other people's paths and ruining their futures, which has caused him significant physical and mental stress. This situation has made it difficult for him to focus on his creative work, and he feels he has let everyone down. He sincerely apologizes to everyone and hopes for their understanding. I have always respected you and never intended to overshadow your brilliance. Please stop speaking ill of me behind my back. Kai's acting is indeed outstanding, and many netizens feel very sorry for him. At the same time, due to the person mentioned in the video, netizens have shifted their focus onto me. My name has once again trended, this time because of angry comments from netizens. Some people are even seeking help with the intent to take extreme measures against Tin. I feel ashamed for having liked Tin's work before. Is it really that difficult to accept others' opinions? Tin is truly disappointing. These comments are really bothering me. Kai, do you have a problem? You stole my design and still pretend to be a good person. Are you secretly in love with me? If there's a problem, you should see a doctor. I mumbled discontentedly while reading the comments. At that moment, a familiar figure appeared at the door of the cabin. It's Xiao Wu. He leaned against the doorframe, panting as he said, "Oh my, Tin, your place is really hard to find. If you hadn't told me before, I don't know how anyone would ever find it. But the environment here is great, and the air is nice too. How is Grandma? Aren't you living with her? I brought her a gift." I was startled by Xiao Wu. Grandma went out to gather herbs. What brings you here? Have you also encountered online bullying? Xiao Wu rolled his eyes, threw his suitcase by the door, and sat down next to me. I was running out of time to eat, and everyone knew our relationship, so no one was willing to help me. Aside from some opportunistic marketing accounts that keep asking me to identify you, it's really annoying. I spend every day with you, and I know perfectly well who is copying whom. Let's go, Brother Tin. We need to go back and deal with these matters. Kai's situation isn't looking good right now. Listening to Xiao Wu, I gently shook my head. Xiao Wu didn't quite understand, but I was clear about it. The reason Kai is struggling now is because I've stepped back. If I were to return, he would recover. Even if I were never to write again, I wouldn't want to give him the chance to plagiarize my work. Looking at the out-of-breath Xiao Wu in front of me, I felt a warmth in my heart. Over the past year, as long as he was willing to create some negative stories about me, he could have lived well, but he has stuck it out. I didn't say anything, and Xiao Wu started talking about the events of the past year. Brother Tin, have you figured it out? I still couldn't understand. If it was someone from our team, Mayan, who leaked the information, then your set of jewelry shouldn't have appeared. Have you checked your home to see if there are any hidden cameras installed? Listening to Xiao Wu, I shook my head and told him the real reason for my withdrawal. It's not just a matter of the cameras. Kai can also perceive my thoughts. At that moment, my grandmother's voice came from outside the door. She said, "What camera? That's a curse." At the same time, Xiao Wu and I turned our gaze toward the door, where Grandma slowly walked in, carrying a medicine basket, and sat down across from me. "When you came back, I noticed you had been cursed. There is a double lotus curse in your mind. What you have is merely the curse itself, while that is the curse's mother. The curse's mother can sense the thoughts in your mind." Xiao Wu was so frightened by Grandma that he couldn't speak, but I knew. Grandma's words were true. She wasn't looking at me. Instead, she was focused on sorting the herbs that had been collected. "I noticed when you first came back, but since you didn't want to say anything, I didn't ask. Now that you all want to know, I'll tell you. I've thought about it for a long time, but I just can't figure out how the curse could have gotten into my mind." At that moment, my grandma looked up and gave me a glance. Could it be that I've been secretly dating someone? Or maybe I have an ambiguous relationship with someone else? This kind of curse was historically used by the legitimate wife to deal with a concubine, where both parties had to unite against a common foe. Your girlfriend turns out to be the medium between two cursed insects. As I listened to my grandmother's words, I couldn't help but tremble. I had my suspicions all along, but now that the truth was laid bare, I was filled with rage. Qing truly knew everything. It was she who had secretly assisted Kai in plotting against me. Xiao Wu noticed my expression and, feeling a bit scared, quickly grabbed my clenched fist. Grandma continued, "The parasite is still in your head. If you don't deal with it, you will be in danger. If you're unwilling to talk about it, I can't help you remove the parasite. However, over the past year, I've been using herbal remedies to weaken its power, and now it is close to death." Listening to Grandma, I remembered the various strange herbal dishes she had made. At that moment, I realized that Grandma had been silently protecting me all along. I looked at her and finally asked the question I had been most wanting to know. Can she still understand my thoughts? My grandmother slowly replied, her eyes revealing a sense of helplessness. I had mentioned before that she only had one breath left. Although she no longer had the ability to discern your thoughts, replicating your actions was still possible. Now that I understood the situation, I could eliminate her within half a month. I suddenly turned to Xiao Wu, my voice clear and loud, surprising even myself. "Xiao Wu, let's go back." Without delay, I immediately started a new design. The goo worm only has a lifespan of half a month. I decided to make good use of this goo worm and prepare a special gift for Kai. After a year, I picked up my paintbrush again, and inspiration flowed from my mind like a spring. Within 10 days, I designed 3 pieces of jewelry and combined them into a collection called Dead Wood. As I expected, on the day I finished the design sketches, Kai announced on his account that he would be launching a major collection named Dead Wood, without even changing the name. This official announcement quickly went viral. Xiao Wu, who had previously been somewhat skeptical of his grandmother's words, was now completely convinced by Kai's announcement. Lele has now become his grandmother's little fan, following her around all day and helping her carry her medicine basket. I am fully focused on assisting my grandmother in dealing with the poisonous insects. The day after Kai released his statement, he unveiled design sketches for 3 pieces of jewelry that are identical to mine. I zoomed in closely to examine the 3 images. Indeed, my grandmother was right. He can't grasp the deeper meaning of my design at the moment and can only imitate it superficially. As a result, the little thoughts I've embedded in the jewelry have also been replicated by him. On the day we killed the poison worm, Xiao Wu was all smiles, but when he turned around, he furrowed his brow, clearly reluctant to leave his grandmother. I couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry, we're not leaving just yet. Let's wait another half-month. Xiao Wu smiled at my words but soon looked down again. It's okay, Brother Tin, you don't need to do this. I feel reluctant to leave Grandma, but let's go back. I will come to visit more often in the future. I gently patted his head. What are you doing? Are you so engrossed in herb gathering that you no longer check your phone? After half a month, for the international design competition, Kai signed up with a piece of driftwood. Don't we want to go back? Of course, we need a big stage. In the following 2 weeks, Xiao Wu continued to stay by his grandmother's side. I stayed in the small cabin, focused on designing my next series of works. If the deadwood was the trap I set for Kai, then this series would be my deadly blow to him. Qin Kai, this time you two are completely finished. At the international designer competition, Kai was on stage presenting 3 pieces of jewelry made from deadwood. I sat in the audience in advance. Just during his introduction, I suddenly stood up. This time, he didn't let me speak first. Tin, I'm really so happy that you could attend this competition. Thank you for appreciating the dead wood. The audience's gaze instantly focused on me. How dare he show up? He really has no fear of death. Tin has always been thick-skinned, otherwise how could he have the audacity to plagiarize? What is he here for today? Are you still thinking about sabotaging Kai's competition? I smiled slightly, my gaze fixed on Kai on the stage. Mr. Kai, I heard that deadwood is the result of your year-long dedication? Upon hearing this, Kai looked somewhat aggrieved. Yes, over the past year, I have experienced many moments of breakdown and was unable to create for a time. It was only when I saw everyone's support that I regained my spirits. The withered tree symbolizes my transformation, and I sincerely created this piece in hopes that everyone would enjoy it. Fans in the audience cheered enthusiastically for him, praising the stunning work. It didn't disappoint. It was even more perfect than Mayan. Waiting is worth it. Kai, a truly talented designer. Upon hearing these words, I couldn't help but smile slightly and then asked him directly, Mr. Kai, could you explain something to me? Why is the direction of the gemstone inlay on the gnarled wood in your sincere masterpiece aligned with my name? As soon as I finished speaking, the scene fell silent. Without giving Kai a chance to rebut, I continued. This set of 3 pieces of jewelry was meticulously designed by me. Each gemstone is set in a different direction, but when placed together, they create a harmonious whole. I'll ask you one last time, Kai, why is my name on your comeback work? This is the trap I prepared for Kai. When designing the dead wood, the larvae in my mind were barely alive, which meant they couldn't read my thoughts but could only imitate my actions. This was the opportunity for a comeback. The judges in the audience came up to the stage to closely examine the 3 pieces of jewelry. Upon realizing that the designs were exactly as I had described, they turned to Kai for an explanation. Kai trembled, sweat pouring down his face. This is my tribute to Tin, as he is my guide in the design industry. The competition chairman abruptly interrupted him, saying, Enough, just listen to how ridiculous your words are. For a designer, every piece of work is a labor of love. How could it possibly bear someone else's mark? Mr. Kai, you have been disqualified from the competition. The chairman of the competition turned to me and said, Tin, please come up to the stage. Drywood is your work. Please share your creative concept and inspiration. This is the best piece I've ever seen. I didn't look at Kai and directly walked up to the stage. I declined the chairman's invitation. The deadwood has already been taken away. Since we are here, I have brought new works that are from the same series as the deadwood, called Spring Awakening. As soon as I finished speaking, Xiao Wu and several staff members came on stage, carrying 3 transparent display cases. Under the spotlight, these 3 pieces of jewelry sparkled brilliantly, leaving those present speechless in awe. After a moment of silence, the crowd erupted in admiration and exclamations. Oh my goodness, is this the strength of Tin's talent? I can hardly imagine how beautiful it would be if I could own this set of jewelry. Compared to Fengchun, the withered wood seems much less impressive. Tin's designs are always full of storytelling. Listening to the audience's admiration, my gaze shifted to Kai. As soon as Feng Chun took the stage, he collapsed on the platform. In comparison, the lifeless tree appeared to be overshadowed. After all, the lifeless tree was the act I had designed for Kai, while Feng Chun was my new work that I was unveiling a year later. I no longer focused on Kai. Instead, I turned my attention to the audience and the judges below. Over the past year, I had experienced a lot and had even contemplated leaving the industry. A month ago, I saw a small pink flower by the edge of a cliff in the deep mountains, which gave me new inspiration. My work is titled Dead Wood Meets Spring. I hope this series can bring hope to everyone, encouraging them to bravely start anew even in desperate situations. As soon as I finished speaking, the audience erupted into warm applause. At that moment, Kai let out a sharp voice, angrily shouting, "Tin, how can you do this? Why do you think you can do this? Everything belongs to me. It's all mine. What's yours is mine." He roared, and then angrily added, "Tin, I'm going to kill you." Before he could finish his words, he coughed up a mouthful of blood and then fainted on the stage. The staff rushed forward, and the scene instantly turned chaotic as the audience began to discuss among themselves. Kai admitted it, didn't he? He is indeed the plagiarist, no doubt about it. Just look at Feng Chun and Tin on stage. It's like a powerful slap in the face. Is Kai in a hurry? Could he be in danger? Listening to these discussions, I couldn't help but scoff internally. It's not a matter of urgency. It's clearly the backlash from the poisonous insect. The creature in my mind was killed by my grandmother, and now that Kai's mother insect has lost her offspring, it naturally seeks to take his life as well. After the World Design Competition ended, my reputation became even more prominent. Many brands reached out to me with collaboration invitations, and the housekeepers of affluent ladies also asked me to design pieces for them. Everyone took pride in owning my designs. Reporters gathered every day outside the hospital where Kai was staying, and the news kept covering the story. Kai's condition is extremely critical. His bodily functions are rapidly declining, and his organs are failing, putting his life in jeopardy. Xiao Wu and I are extremely busy. Although the pressure is intense, we are managing to cope with it. However, Qing's arrival disrupted my mood. I was taken aback when she suddenly appeared, almost failing to recognize her. She is now frail, with her skin covered in rashes and nearly all of her hair gone. I understood immediately that she was suffering a backlash. As a medium for the cursed insects, she was bound to face this outcome. Furthermore, with Kai's impending misfortune, Qing wouldn't live much longer either. Upon seeing me, Zhang Tianze immediately knelt down and bowed his head fervently, saying, "Tin, I was wrong. I truly made a mistake. Please help me. What method are you using? I beg you to save me, otherwise I will die." I crossed my arms and looked at her coldly. "You're not feeling guilty because you realize you were wrong, but rather because you know you're about to die." Qing lowered her head heavily. "No, I really realize I was wrong, Tin. Don't you love me? How can you just stand there and watch me die? Save me, and let's live well together in the future. I love you, Tin," she pleaded, tightly holding onto my leg. "Tin, I really know I was wrong, and it wasn't intentional. It's all Kai's fault. He deliberately sabotaged our relationship. He seduced me, and it's all his fault." I kicked her away forcefully, filled with disgust. "Just look at you now, you're worse off than a beggar. Why do you think I would want something worthless? Don't disgust me any further. I'm really about to throw up." After saying this, I refused to look at her again and instructed Lele to call security to take her away. Seeing her like this, it's likely that she will soon face misfortune alongside Kai. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the busy scene below the tall buildings. The scumbag and the wicked woman are destined for a bad ending. But I am different. I am a withered tree that blossoms in spring. My future lies in the mountains, fields, and sky, where no one can reach me.